Right. Good morning, folks, and welcome to this lovely day out there. It's not raining, so I'm informed. So there. Today we have a talk by a person I have known for a few years. I first met him when I went to Redland Meeting and met him and his wife. So that was a few years ago. But today we have Michael Tuckwell, whose title is Why I Am a Quaker. Michael.
Right. Good morning, friends. And I see we've come in force this morning because my co-clerk has also arrived. Graham. We work together as co-clerks at Redland. The title is Why Am I a Quaker? And that's lovely. But I think I thought that I need to tell you something about myself, who I am, where I come from, as to how I've reached this part of the journey. So I've just prepared a few notes, which I shall read. They're about one side of A4. Listen carefully, because there's a test afterwards. I was born at the end of World War II, roughly, and brought up on a farm in the northeast of Scotland, in the land that some call the Mercia Riviera. And that's because the Gulf Stream turns around the top of Scotland and comes into the Moray Firth, warming the waters, and since environmental changes, warming them even more so. Childhood for me was full of happy memories of play in the country, building huts, making fires outside, and cooking potatoes in the embers. And more extremely with a friend, thinking we could tap into the farm telephone lines by attaching string to the wires and using tin cans as microphones. For schooling, after primary stage, I was boarded in Scotland, and the school was regimented by attendance at an Episcopalian chapel twice a day. So my religious roots were influenced very much by the school from a very young age, and both by my parents. Then as a young adult in the 60s, I volunteered, as many people did at that time, in Brazil. I worked for 2 years with Catholic Relief Services as an agriculturalist based in the city of Belém at the mouth of the Amazon. You may have heard of that because that's where the last COP was. And traveled in the north of the country all the way up the Amazon. During that time, working in different Catholic communities, I felt a calling to train for the Anglican ministry. And when I came home to the UK 2 years later, I was selected for training. However, just prior to training, I was working with children and young people. And I then felt that that calling was better worked out working with organizations, working with children, rather than the Anglican ministry. And this work with kids and young people formed all of my employed working years. And so life moved on. And married with 2 young children, we attended Anglican churches, URC churches, Methodist churches in particular, whichever were convenient wherever we were living. And I became involved with youth groups, work with young people, and eventually marriage preparation with young adults in our village. And in the 90s, feeling very restrained by the traditional church dogma, creeds, and beliefs, we started attending Redland Quaker Meeting. We found it interesting, friendly, and very different to traditional church worship. And my wife's parents, who started life as Baptists, joined Quakers some years before us. So that was an interesting influence. In 2007, after being an attender for more than 10 years, I applied for membership. In my retirement, I had volunteered again in Brazil, in South America, working with an organization that was working with street children in Rio, And it was whilst I was there that I decided I wanted to become a member of Bristol Quakers. It's one of those serendipity moments when you're realizing where you're at, and it came to me. That's all I can say. It came to me. And what is that came to me? And strangely, at the same time, back here in our house in Lodwick, because we were living in a different house then, Sue had decided the same thing. So almost simultaneously, without talking about it together, because mobile phones at that point were quite tricky, we had decided separately to become members. And that's what we did. And I do recall that while an attender at Redland, how difficult it was to find out how things were done around the meeting. I mean, how did things happen? There was no real way of knowing apart from talking to people. But I did find out. What threw me in through the meeting door and to Quakers were some of the following things. First, a welcome. A welcome at the door. Welcome, friends. Warm and inclusive. That was so important. I was being encouraged. Friends were happy to engage with me about Quakerism, about what I believed or didn't believe. Attendance at an inquirers' evening where questions could be asked and you didn't feel foolish asking questions. And the opportunity to express more what I believed and to belong in an organization that felt simpático. If you understand a bit of Portuguese, you understand simpático. And in those days, it took a long time to discover how things happen. But when you offered, you got involved. So offering to help in other ways was a welcome gift to friends because they would pull you in as quick as lightning. Opportunities for all kinds of interest groups and roles. I wasn't an accountant, never have been. But I was asked if I would take on the role of local meeting treasurer and said yes, because by doing so, you find out how things are done. I wasn't a bookkeeper, but dear Judy Hollier, who used to attend Redland at one stage, and was the treasurer before me, I think, or two before me. And she attends Central, I think, or has attended Central in more recent times. She was a very able mathematician, basically, was Judy Hollier, and she managed accounts on double entry accounting, which she taught me, and then gave me Sank's book to read about how you do it. But becoming treasurer at that stage where the meetings had much more involvement in the money because everything is pooled now. And becoming area meeting treasurer, which I did after about 7 years, before Paul Whitehouse became treasurer, it was a real eye-opener. I think I can't remember exactly many, but I think there were something like 35 to 40 bank accounts across the 7 meetings in the area. Can you imagine that? 45 bank accounts. So I set about, with help from others, to close them. And it caused a bit of consternation. I mean, Redland had 4 accounts for a starter. All they needed was a really good spreadsheet to put all the funds on and one bank account into which money was paid in and out. And there was somebody else who was checking that the treasurer, so double entry accounting from people, always 2 on 1 account, 2 people. And of course, in modern times, the banks have changed. You can actually pay in stuff now with double authorization quite easily. So those 2 large jobs, which I undertook, but also going back over there, why did I come and what was it that drew me in? I see the testimonies as important guiding markers and strongly believe that all Quakers who have gone before me and thank them, George Fox and others, for making a way of life interesting and challenging. And as my late father-in-law said, it was like coming home, coming to Quakers. I stop there, friend. And if you've got any queries, ask them.
I would dearly like to understand what double entry bookkeeping is. I mean, to start with, just in a sentence, but I mean, I wouldn't mind reading about it because it's been annoying me that I didn't understand it for many years.
Well, I am no accountant and no trained bookkeeper, but the late Judy Nile, who took over from me in Redland, whose funeral was yesterday, she got a first in bookkeeping, I discovered yesterday. She was excellent at bookkeeping. And her father, who was a solicitor, but Judy was very shrewd and acute with her accounting. I think the essence of the double entry is you make the single entry into two places. You make it into the bank account, but you also make it into an income account or an expenditure account as well. So you're running the two together. And you have to tie up the ends in between. I mean, it's really helped me because I run my own home accounts like that. I take all the bank statements, take all the money, take all the entries off them, put them onto my spreadsheet and know exactly what's happening. Because at the moment, we've got builders starting here tomorrow on Monday. And we need to know what we're spending and how we're spending it. And I shall be keeping a very close watch on my spreadsheet. Spreadsheets were lovely, but I think nowadays things have moved from all that kind of entry and payments into much more automated systems with QuickBooks or somebody else, which we were in the process of doing.
Would you say it's the kind of, I mean, I'm quite good at simple. I don't know if I dare call it maths. I'm very good at adding up and subtracting and dividing, that sort of stuff. But I'm absolutely hopeless going beyond that. And I'm just wondering whether I would be best advised to stay with what I know or whether it would be beneficial for general use. I mean, is it a useful thing for the average person to know about?
Well, I'm no accountant, but I mean, knowing about how your money is spent for me is really important.
Yeah.
In our house, in our household here, I look after the money. Sue is very good at spending it and very good at managing it in her head.
Yeah.
Whereas I like to see the figures on paper. And I think the figures are quite important at the end of the day. I learned a lot for doing it for friends. For an enormous amount.
Sorry, I've taken you off target a bit. Sorry.
So is there a kind of a community of, as it were, of the people who are doing the finances for Quakers? Is there a sort of network and support for new treasurers and so on?
Yes. There's for every role you take on, there's training at probably online now because Woodrow doesn't exist, but all the training for treasurers is online. I used to be part of there used to be a whole meetings of treasurers around the country. And at one stage, they'd have an annual meeting at Swanwick or in Derbyshire or one of the places, conference centres. And there's an agenda. There used to be an agendas planning committee, which planned the agenda. So I'd go up to London, sit down with people, and we'd look at the agenda, what the agenda would be for the conference.
Great.
So there are huge links. There used to be. It's changed a lot though. I mean, Paul Whitehouse is the Britain Yearly Meeting treasurer, as you probably know. And he's an economist by training. His degree was in economics. And he took over the Era Meeting accounts in Bristol from me, which I was really glad to pass over by then after 6 years of trying to produce accounts. I said I would take on the role of treasurer as long as the accountants pull the accounts together, because with 7 meetings accounts, you had to pull all those. And it was all about money being transferred. And you had to know what all the transfers were about.
Yeah.
because it was all area meeting money. There was one charity.
I'm surprised, Michael, that you haven't been persuaded by Britain Yearly Meeting to do any of the roles that come along to people occasionally. Have you been asked at all to do something which is more than Bristol area wide? Or have you been persuaded to do?
No, I mean, no, I've not done anything else for BYM. And they have a strange sort of way. You fill in one of these yellow sheets of your skill profile and send it off, and it goes into it felt like it goes into a black hole and never comes out again. So why do people get chosen and asked to do certain things? Because there's some of the talents are spotted, and they don't need any of my talents at the moment. If you look at the peaceful schools work that's going on at the moment, for example, tremendous good work being done there by a group of people who are like Jenny Harris, who's been a teacher in her life. So that's excellent work. I think I spent a lot of time for the area. I raised nearly £250,000 of your central meetings expenditure on your building. If you go back that far, when your whole meeting house was kind of resurrected, and there was a lot of planning. Yeah, you were, and with the Southern Trust gave 100,000. That was, and then we raised other money through Triodos Foundation. I wrote to umpteen trusts and raised money that way. So that was a really good thing to be doing. And I enjoy doing that. The file is sitting over there behind me. Still got all the paperwork in it, all the people I wrote to, and where we got the money from.
Why ask that? Because I was involved for quite a number of years with the Children and Young People's Group at Yearly Meeting, and I thought, you might get co-opted to that one day because of your work within Children and Young People's stuff as well. And you never thought of getting involved in that way.
Well, I worked for what was called a big charity like Bernardo's called Action for Children now. It used to be called the NCH, National Children's Home. And I worked for them for 30 plus years. And I think having worked with them in that way, I was quite happy to take a rest from doing the face-to-face work with young people. I have done other things. I mean, I was on the board of what was Cherry Orchards. I picked up the accounts for AEOB, which, bless him, David Mowat and the late Jamie Croft started, because it was in a terrible state because they hadn't done accounts for 2 years. And the way that the money was coming in and was structured was not sustainable, despite Bristol Quakers giving them £20,000, which considered a loan at the start with, but then became a gift, because people gave their money into that organization hoping they would get a return of their money, but the basis hadn't been worked out properly, and people never got any return on their money, and some people have asked for money back. So it was based on the Whitney model that Tony had before, that's here because of all the way that the people that put in there, the rents weren't coming in as they should done, and the whole 101 other things of AEOB. But that's another story altogether. But I think Paul Whitehouse has got a handle on it better than ever I was able to get a handle on it, and selling off the building to somebody to another charity. I think that's the scene where that. But yes, go back to Cherry Orchards as an organization. I mean, that closed. That was trying to think who they were. Some will remember. But that's been taken over by Ruskin Mill now, over in Canford. Very good place. And we've got two young people who come to Redland are workers at that school. It's a weekly school for children with disabilities. Beautiful place, lovely. It has a lovely garden on the other side of Blaze Castle. It's a beautiful place. Cherry orchards. And I got involved with West of England Friends Housing Society as well, when Phil Giles was chair of the board, and sadly died about a year after taking on the role. Yeah. By the way, interestingly, Avenue House is closed with the flu outbreak. So,
no, really?
I think it's Frenchy that are due to do the work there this Sunday, but I've put a note round.
Yeah. So one of the most amazing things working with you, Michael, has been to switch the topic, is your amazing grasp of the backstory of pretty well everybody in the meeting, which is incredible. I mean, and very useful in understanding people's motivations and what they might be useful to do. Can you tell us a little bit about how you do that?
Smile nicely at people when they come through the door is one very good thing to do. But how do you get people to the door? And I think we've discovered that so much is word of mouth. I mean, I think Redland probably sits in an advantageous position because we're in this student area, and we've followed up with the student meeting at the Multi-Faith Chaplaincy at the University of Woodland Road. And Helen Chambers, bless her, attends that on a Wednesday morning, and that's a good sort of breeding ground. And we were saying, I think, weren't we, that why have our numbers gone up to 80 on a Sunday morning? And we think it can something to do with a turbulent world, particularly around Ukraine and other parts where there are wars in different places. And people feel certainly a sort of need when the violence and when the dangers become almost closer to us. People feel a need to find something. So that something, that other spiritual world which they probably live in some of the time but don't recognize it. So I think that's part of it. And I think, Graham, you were saying that when you were in the States, the figures the reasons for people going to increase Quakers there are similar. So in the Vietnam War, the Quakers numbers went up and went down again. And now they're in certain meetings, they're rising. And if you go to Sheffield meeting, or if you read Craig Barnett's blog, he's one of the development workers for Sheffield, you will discover that meetings in there and in Manchester are increasing and dramatically with numbers. They've started groups, midweek groups for people.
Wow.
So there are things happening around us. There's a lovely old hymn, isn't there? God moves in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform. You will know the rest of it, I'm sure. But the Spirit does move in interesting ways amongst us, and I think that's something that I've kind of held on to because it's really important, and it's in us all. It's just a question of recognizing it, and sometimes we don't recognize it. We don't realize how it's happening.
Do you think we're responding correctly to the increase in numbers, or are there other things we should be doing?
I think we can. There are other things we should be doing. I mean, we've partly discussed this as co-clerks, yes. Like, I can remember my own going to an inquirers morning, I think it was on a Saturday, with other new people who were attending Redland, and finding some very welcome friends, having tea and biscuits and coffee or whatever, and having a discussion about what is it you're coming for? What is it? What is this Quaker meeting that sits inside it, that doesn't vote on anything, but understands a difference between consensus and whatever spirit-led is? And what is spirit-led? And is this spirit, the spirit of how people use the old language of the God language, or some of the much stronger Christian language. And there are still some friends, I think you'll find, who are very happy to use the Christian-based language. I kind of veered away from some of it because of the difficult connotations, I think, and understandings of what I understand is our way of life and the future of it. I see Gray there with this sort of space background to you. Ether gives you an ethereal touch. You've almost got a halo stuck over your head, Ray. But I mean, you know, we are one small planet in a huge cosmos, and I think we need to recognize that for who we are as tiny specks.
Something little bigger than us.
Emptying my shed the other day and clearing away a shed for the builders to give them space, and you lift up the old bricks on the bottom, and it's full of slaters and insect life, you know, and this other underground movement is going on all around us in the soil and in the air. But unless we're real scientists, we don't understand too much about it. So, but it's a fascinating world we live in.
May I express a little story here, which I think is apposite to what we're just talking about there, was that there was a chap who came to Central Meeting and talked about he'd never been there before, type of thing, you know. And he said he'd been to other Quaker meetings around the country because he moved around a lot. And I said, well, that's good. You know. And he said, oh, I'd like to come here. And he stayed for a couple of meetings. And I never saw him again for quite a long time. Then I saw him in the street once and I said, hello, you know. Can't remember his name now, but hello, and how are you? And, you know, I haven't seen you at Quaker meeting at all. Why do you think that is? Why is that? And he said, I really tried, Ray. And I said, right. And he said, I felt in the end that you are far too intellectual lot for me. And you know, you thought, why was that? Is Quakers are Quakers the kind of the intellectuality of religion, or is that just a misconception? Because I've felt that occasionally, you know, that you know, there aren't, that we have lots of teachers and nurses and doctors and university people and all those types of things. And there are woefully few of what I would class as your working class governor.
But it depends how you describe them. But I understand what you're saying, you know, Ray. I mean, that may well be the case. But there is also something about we don't know where everybody's coming from or what they're involved in. And I'm sure, I mean, I don't know how many people you've got at Central at the moment, but when I've been there, there's been a full circle of what, 20 plus people, is it?
We get 20, 25 plus at the moment, which is very good.
Yeah. And you know everybody well? Do you know all their backgrounds?
I try to know as many as I can. You know?
Yeah.
Yes, I think one of the good things about there only being about 20 of us is that we do mix and talk over tea and coffee. So we do, I think it's one of the things that I like about that particular meeting, you know, the fact it's small enough to meet each other, but not so small that you I don't know, get a bit kind of crowded somehow.
Or noisy.
Yes.
Yeah, well, small meetings, and if you go to other meetings, as we've done from time to time, I've been around at different places, and different meeting houses, and different groups of Quakers. You think they behave slightly different to the way you have, it's interesting. And if you go to if you go to the States, I've not been, but only online. But in Pennsylvania and other parts, I mean, Graham can tell you more. That the Quakers have different ways of operating. They're much more programmed. For example, if you go to Africa or Bolivia, and some of that. And if you look on this, the stuff of FWCC, Friends of the World Consultation Group and the different areas, meetings, it's fascinating hooking on to some of the work that's done across the world of the 55 nations that make up the Quaker body. And some of the stuff that went on which Claire went to in South Africa last year, wasn't it?
FWCC.
Call it, but the convocation
FWCC.
of the FWCC meeting. It's fascinating. The way different people comes from their cultures. I mean, we all come from our own different little cultures. Even if we think we're Bristolians or we've been living in the area for ages, but we've got our own ways of doing things, and the things we like and things we don't like. So we have to try and be very tolerant of people. But we are, as an organization, I think, as friends, certainly in the Bristol area, but if you spread out more, you find it's, we're very pretty white. We're not very black or brown. And that's for various reasons, isn't it? We've got all kinds of history as Quakers, Bristol. Being part of the reparations group, if you are part of that, you will know all that. So there's light and dark in all our existences. Yeah.
Well, the longitudinal studies of surveys of Quakers, which started in 1990, show us to be 99% white. And in answer to Ray's story, we do have a very high percentage of people that have gone to further education and so on. But with the number of traditional Quakers is diminishing. The liberal Quakers are about 50%, and non-theists are quite a big portion. And when it's quite a range of, in that. So we are a changing community.
I don't know if you've attended any of the non-theist groups online or the universalist groups, which it's worth doing just to find out. I mean, I think probably the non-theist group, my view is that it will probably fade after a while, because I don't think, for me, it's not theism or non-theism. There is and hopefully that's what we try to do at Redland. We hold everybody together, depending where they are on the spectrum of theism or non-theism. Because I think it's so important, because everybody's got something to offer. And it's trying to find the ways and helping people to feel comfortable in sharing. Yeah. There's so much. Just looking at the range of 7, 8 people here we've got sitting in front of the screen here, and knowing where you all come from and know a little bit about you and what your preferences are and what you like. It's great. It makes for richness, doesn't it? Of offering. Yes.
Here's another little statistic which I found out quite a few years ago, that in the late 17th century in Bristol, 1 in 3 people were Quakers.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's quite a statistic, isn't it? Quakers in Bristol, it was a radical city. You had George Fox come in quite a few times, and he got married in Bristol in the end. You had Penn, who came and got married for his second marriage and all this lot, then went to Pennsylvania. And of course, you had the incident of James Naylor, which was quite, a big thing for Bristol at the time, So Bristol is kind of pulling its weight, really, within Quakerism.
And who won the day with James Naylor? And who was it who maintained the meetings? It was the children, because I remember we had with Mark Smalley, who was, when he was still working for the BBC, we had a reenactment of the children being in prison. I don't know if you were
in
with
Bridewell.
Yeah, in the old prison. And we went behind bars to feel what it was like to be behind bars.
Yeah, we went from Bristol Central to walk to Bridewell.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of history in Bristol, a lot of history of Quakers, yes.
Yeah.
Michael, could you say a little bit more about the moment when you felt you wanted to become a Quaker? What did it was a quiet epiphany, obviously, and what led up to it? What caused that? What was it like?
I was in Brazil. I was in Rio part of the time, and working on a farm outside Rio with kids. But I think it was the time I also had a lot of time off and used to wander along Copacabana, and taking a little sustenance here, there, and everywhere. I think it was one of those moments when you're actually, I had plenty of time to think. I did a lot of walking too. I missed the bus back, so there was plenty of time to think, and it was one of those moments where I felt, yes, this is what I must do. I couldn't explain it other than the fact that I want to be part of this organization, this church-based organization, because they call it church, in a bigger way. And membership for me seemed to be an important thing to do, because it's about, and some of the old words about, I suppose I was convinced that this is what I needed to do. Convincement is the old word in English, isn't it? So it was, yes, it was epiphany-like a moment, I think, but it wasn't just a flash in the pan, because it stayed with me. It's nothing like some people hear voices or somebody talking to me. No, I'm too grounded to feel, for me, that that's the way that the Spirit worked. But it was something entered into me and changed my thinking about what I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. And that was in 2007. Yeah, a long time ago now.
Yeah,
feels like a long time ago. Yes. But David, are you a member, David, or just
I'm an attender.
Yeah, because some people remain attenders for all their life. I mean, you can think of this lovely lady in Redland called Jennifer Clapham. You may know her. She was at the funeral yesterday. I mean, she's been an attender all her life. She'll never become a member, but she is an absolute full-blooded Quaker attender. And at one level, the distinction between the two, well, it'll be interesting to see what the new revision of the Quaker Faith and Practice decides, but there may well be a change in that.
We've had quite a few talks on the topic, why I'm a Quaker, and I generally on Friday mornings I pop out for coffee before this meeting, and then I come back, and I was crossing the road at Templemeads to the cafe and thinking about the talks we have, and I was thinking, well, I could do one called "Why I'm an Attender,"
Yes.
Yes.
Good idea.
But I think you're absolutely right, because I think that distinction, which is there, is historical. But I mean, if you read a lot of the stuff in Quaker Faith and Practice and about former older friends who lived in through the centuries, the language is such that I think certainly in the past, people felt that God, as they expressed it, was very much there, and there was a great reverence. It's the same through the Anglican Church or the Catholic Church at that point. But in more modern times, I think there's a bit different understanding of God, the Spirit, for most people. For some, there still remains that one that they might have had in their infancy. But what I understand from people, what I appreciate and feel with other people, it's a connection, isn't it? I mean, there's a spirit of connection of people. That's when we sit down in meeting for worship together. What are we doing? I sit in there and I think of family, of friends, of the people surrounding me, because these are the important people that we're with. And the people who are not there, who can't be there. I think today, particularly, I think of my brother because he died 5 years ago today, the COVID and with
wow,
something else he had. So it's a particular Friday the 13th today. It was 13th today. It's a significant day for me. It's become. So it's nice to be able to.
Is there anything you miss of the old style religious services? The singing or the sermons
I will
or
still go.
readings?
I love music, but I
Yeah.
don't like all the words of some of the hymns. I mean, some of the hymns are dreadful. Some of the hymns are beautiful. But the words are important, I think, and some of the words, there's we've got I think the local church here has a curate, and she's keen on the missions of seamen. There's wonderful hymns about the sea. Some of them are spot on, but they're quite old, written a long time ago. And some of the music that goes with it is lovely. I've never moved away from the music. I love some of the old church music. I mean, if you've been to chapel twice a day at school, like I was, bisky, bisky, amen, down on your knees and up again, they used to say. Because Episcopal Church, that's what it was. And it was like the Anglican Church in England. But it was, for all my mocking it, it gave me an underpinning of a habit forming of going to sing, because I used to sing in the choir as a youngster, as a treble, and then subsequently as the tenor voice. So all that sort of training at one level, it was good. Yeah. To laugh about it sometimes.
Richard Ingrams, who was the first editor of Private Eye, made an interesting comment, which was that he was quite a committed. I think he was a Catholic, but he said, yeah, well, I think religion is something that you inherit. Were your parents religious?
My mother was, not my father. My father, he'd been away to public school and the same as I did, chapel twice a day, I think. And he
squeezed out.
He said, no, I believe in nature. He said, put my ashes around the roses. But we didn't. We put them because he was a fisherman, so we put these ashes in the River Findhorn, into the stream of life. Yeah. That's where he went.
Okay, great.
Yeah. And my mother, she went too that way. So it's that little place up on the River Findhorn. It's a beautiful river, the River Findhorn. It's got this lovely brown peaty water. And you still get fresh salmon coming in there. If you've ever maybe been to the Findhorn community? Yeah. Oh, you have, Graham. Yeah. You have you, David?
Oh, yeah.
Right. That bay, Findhorn Bay, is beautiful.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I got a European grant once to study eco-villages. And I went to Seven Lindens in Germany for a while, and I ended up studying with a German mystic called Thomas Hübel. And to me, what's important about the Quakers, social action, yes, radical tradition, yes, but authentic spiritual experience with George Fox, to me, is a sort of founding founding on a direct, profound experience of spirit to me. You know, if I wasn't a Quaker, I'd like to be a William Blake. I'd like the Church of William Blake. You know, as in, if you know what I mean. They weren't quite contemporaries, but somehow or other at that time there was this breakthrough of the, you know, the rigid structure of Catholicism, and then the Anglicans, which was all about, it was nothing to do with religion or God. It was all about power, right? And
money.
yeah, and to me it was this bursting through of spirit that is to me, you know, an essential part. If it wasn't,
yes, I mean, John Fox, it's an interesting man. I mean, reading about him, isn't he? Because I mean, he travelled on with his horse, and they slept rough, slept wild.
Yeah,
and he travelled around the north of England, and you can imagine how did this man have such an influence to influence 5 million people to become Quakers in the country?
yeah.
I mean, it is quite extraordinary. Quite
Angela,
extraordinary.
you were shaking your head violently just then, Angela. Can you tell us why?
No, not really. It would take too long. Okay, just leave it at that. It was my immediate reaction. I'm a teacher. I believe in state education, and so there's issues there. And I count myself as a humanist. Okay, so that's all I'd want to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You talked a bit about music there, Michael. Yeah, I love music. You know, I love religious music, ordinary music. You know, not ordinary, but music has it's a passion of the human soul. You know, it can make you go, wow. Listen to Foray's Requiem. And if you don't cry by at the end, you know, you have no emotions whatsoever. That's what I say. But there was a song we used to sing in the infants, and it was called All Things Bright and Beautiful. And we used to say all things bright and beautiful. And then John Rutter made a rejigging of it, and it's so beautiful and worth listening to, because I have a horrible voice, so I won't intrude that upon you. But it was all things bright and beautiful, all creatures great and small, and it was just stunningly good. And I thought, little children should listen to this. And as you say, you know, with the trebles of the children, that would be absolutely beautiful. Just a little aside there.
Well, on music, I was musing with a friend just recently that, you know, in a way, you know, Michael, you started with, you know, born at the end of the war. I was born in 47, just after the end of the war. And growing up, you know, that in all of human history, before that time, there was no such thing as the electric guitar or the Marshall amplifier. And it's like, you know, so all that time, it took all that time for evolution to bring humanity to the point where life on planet Earth was worthwhile.
Yes. Well, time moves on, doesn't it? And you know,
before you go, would you mind a few moments with your musings upon perhaps where Quakers are going in the future?
Yeah.
Well, I can only say that from our own experience at the moment at Redland, um, because the people who are coming in are not just young students, they are what I call young working people, late 20s, 30s. And these people are searching. And, one day we had 9 new people come in. That's a lot of people to absorb and to get round and to discover. Now, some of those will stay, some of those won't stay. But I think we're in a wave, and I think we've got to get hold of it. I mean, elders, I know, because Graham and I attend the elders meetings, have had to really think about what it is they're trying to do and the task that they've got in ensuring that they're sharing circles, which we divide people into, so that people get the appropriate sort of support when it's needed. So there are a lot of things happening there. I think it's at the moment it's positive, and it's I think central. You've got the potential as central because you're right in the city centre almost. And I think so much will depends on your door. I see you've got a problem with doorkeeping. I was just reading some minutes, and I thought, oh heck, come on, get a life. You don't want to write all about that, but for somehow, get the timing right. The time is 11 o'clock. Somebody can be there till 11, quarter past 11. Then it goes shut. And if somebody rings the bell, let them in. What's the problem? So I do think we've got to move with the times. We've got to hear what people are saying to us from outside, as well as listening to ourselves, but listening to others all the time.
And then can I just add?
Yeah.
I mean, if you want, couldn't Central Meeting put out an invitation to the other meetings? Come and join us one day. Come and see how we work and join in and experience a different feel, because we have got quite a few meetings around Bristol, and people roam around at times and they choose which one they end up with. So there must be different feels. And, in fact, earlier on during this hour, I was imagining a sort of inter-Quaker meeting tour, because I went on an interfaith day. It was called Diverse Open Doors. And I went with the interfaith group, and we went to the Greek Orthodox, to the Jewish synagogue, to the Hindu and the Sikh temples, and the Gurdwara in Eastern. No, that wasn't the Gurdwara. Sorry, the Muslim center there, the Jami Masjid, and it was very and a Buddhist center. It was really an interesting day. It was a whole day touring around, but it just opens up the idea that it's possible to go and meet different people. And if nobody said hello to you or welcomed you, I don't know if you'd go back again. I don't know. Unless they sang songs that you really enjoyed and you wanted to go and sing them again. And we don't. Anyway, just an idea.
Yeah.
Well, we in Redland the young Quakers come and stay for a weekend, and they will be back again this year. And it was a remarkable glimpse into what the future of Quakerism might look like. Clearly, this group of just about 100 young people were probably more radical than your average, but they were much more gender fluid. There was a talk about reparations, and whereas in the area of meeting, it's more like, well, sort of move very slowly. Their view was, well, I'm surprised you haven't got even further with it. And they were, so the sense was that they were much more radical than the typical Quaker, much more action orientated. There was a discussion going on about what to do if you got arrested and what your rights were. This was quite a different view from the traditional Quakers. So I suspect that Quakers will, and if you look at the long-term surveys of Quakers, which have happened about every 10 years from 1990, we are becoming more radical. We are becoming more better educated as well, but also more diverse in our opinions. So I suspect that what we are seeing there is probably a heightened exaggeration of what the future would look like, but I suspect it will be more radical.
Well, friends, I've actually got to go because my daughter has just flown in from Bilbao.
Great.
Wow.
I think she's just arrived at the door. Just for a long weekend, as you do.
As you do.
So
Well, thank you for joining us, Michael. It was an interesting hour.
Fantastic.
It's good to have the talking.
It was nice to get your backstory this time, rather than you just telling everybody else's backstory.
Pleasure. Okay, I'm going to leave you.
Good, Michael.
Bye-bye, friends.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But, before we all go, what are we doing next week, you may ask? And I will tell you. You're listening to, hopefully you're going to be listening to me. And it's a history and adventures in food.
Can't hear.
A history and adventures in food.
Food.
Devon.
Food, F-O-O-D.
Oh, right. I couldn't hear it.
Different. I was given a wonderful book by a woman with the amazing name of Pin Vogler. You can't see the book now, but P-E-N-V-O-G-P-E-N first name
Pen.
V-O-G-L-E-R.
Booklet.
That was her name. Actually, a wonderful book called Scoff, which I devoured within days. But it's a wonderful book, and I shall be quoting mercilessly from it. It is with other resources from other places, but I am thoroughly enjoying writing it up at the moment, and hopefully to be finished by next Friday when I'm ready to go. So that is what I'm doing. And the week after that, you have Monsieur Saunders, who's talking about solar upon homes.
Yeah,
and even Watson.
It's going to be the local energy plan, which the government have just announced. The former title will be supplanted by this amazing announcement, and some thoughts about it.
Right.
Four Quakers.
Well, thank you, friends.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Good day.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Bye.